So we're here with the Campaign for Working Connecticut. We are a statewide coalition of businesses, educators, workforce advocates, community leaders, all working together to make Connecticut an inclusive and equitable economy. We advocate for policies that expand education, workforce training, and economic opportunities, making sure that workers have the skills they need and that businesses have the talent they need to thrive. So today, again, we're focusing on opportunity youth, which has been an issue. The campaign, which has been together for over 10 years now, has been focused on for the last couple years. Obviously fits perfectly inside our mission of an inclusive and equitable economy. And we've been really excited in the last 2 years to be working closely with many of the providers and advocates and young people themselves who are focused on young people in Connecticut, ages 14 to 24, who are experiencing disconnection from school or work. We've had a lot of data and a lot of information about this group of young people. We tend to use the term opportunity youth. Sometimes you hear at-risk and disconnected youth. Sometimes you hear other descriptors. But all in all, we're talking about young people who are on the journey, making that transition into adulthood, who need some more support and help to be connected to the systems and resources they need to thrive and be successful, and to find hope and opportunity in their lives. So we are going in a marathon hour together today to touch on that. First, we're going to do a quick legislative update as to what's happening in Connecticut with our colleague, Mark Donald. Then we're going to zoom out from Connecticut for a moment, and we're going to hear from the folks, Mimi Haley from the Campaign for National Youth Employment Coalition, to take a high-level look at what's happening at the federal level, something we're all tracking very closely, get a sense of their expertise, and what's also happening in the other 49 on this issue. Then we're going to come back and zoom in on Connecticut again with our colleague and friend, Rachel Leventhal-Weiner, for an overview on the data that was just released, that update from the P20 wind data about what do we know is happening across Connecticut with this group of young people. So going to start real local, very current, zoom up to the federal, then come back to some more information that you can use. We're going to take your questions throughout, particularly kind of at the end of each presentation session. We'd love to hear from you about what you're hearing or seeing or thinking or need to know. Then we'll wrap things up with next steps and how we can keep working together. So that is our plan for today. Daniel, did I miss anything? We are good.
We're good.
All
Let's
right. So
go.
with that, all right, I'll hand it over to a fabulous member of our Opportunity Youth Coalition under the campaign, Mark Donald, President and CEO of Catalyst in Bridgeport. Mark, tell us about what's happening at the State House.
Great. Thanks, Amy and Daniel, for the invite. Happy to share, and apologies for a little bit about my atmosphere. I hopped out of a meeting to share what I've experienced at the Capitol in the last few days, last few weeks, really. As many of you know, there's a lot of attention being focused on disconnected and disengaged youth. A lot as a result of some of the recent reports, 119K to zero. Report amongst many others. So naturally, when folks who are not familiar with it, get wind of problems, they all have ideas how to solve it. And as many of us here have a lot of experience working with these young people, I think we are probably better suited to advise them on policy decisions, and that's kind of the tact that I've tried to take in working with legislators. Fortunately, many of them are at least open to hearing. Some of them are kind of new to the content, which I think is super important for us on the call to educate them with an open mind on things that we've seen best, share the data, most importantly. One of the big messages we've gotten consistently from all the legislators to a person is don't ask me for money and show me the data. So we've been trying to back up a lot of what we have done with data. We're in partnership with a couple of other organizations, Domus down at Stanford, CTVIP in New Haven, ROCA, OPP, Compass, and Forge City Works up in Hartford, where we're trying to use our voice in the spectrum of services that we have at hand to help educate and inform to ensure that if there is money and resources behind it, that it's focused on the right thing. If it's just language in the bill, that it's language that's going to help the young people we serve and help the organizations that serve it. All in all, right now at the Education Committee, there's SB 1511 right now in the joint committee being with some amendments to try and help with some workforce development that ideally with money from appropriations will go out to RFP so that we can, apply and use our experience and hopefully be innovative to support the work of the young people. I think there's a few other bills that have some potential getting out of committee. SB 6 and SB 1542, I believe, the JJPOC bill, Juvenile Justice Policy and Oversight Committee that we're keeping an eye on. That will also hopefully bring some resources to these young people. So happy to add context, answer any questions or any further thoughts in regards to what I've experienced up at the LOB. Thanks for the opportunity to chat.
Mark, thanks so much. It's so appreciated. Bringing your experience and your amazing presence at the LOB this year
Thank
is
you.
so deeply appreciated. I want to also acknowledge my fabulous co-chair from the Campaign for Working Connecticut, Jim Boucher from Capital Workforce Partners. Jim, who I know has also been stalking the halls of the LOB. Jim, do you have anything you want to update to or share to that?
Sure. And again, Jim Boucher, Capital Workforce Partners. And as Mark noted, the Bill 1511 did go through this morning with substitute language. And I think we're seeing some positive results to that, as Mark mentioned, further recognizing the importance of community partners and organizations that have been doing the critical work. As well as other key, institutions and organizations, workforce boards, educational systems, et cetera. So I know I'm thinking, Amy and Daniel, the substitute language is also available, and maybe we can also make that available to everyone, maybe during the call here. But again, I think very positive news that we're seeing as the movement on that legislation occurred this morning. And I would also say that, as Mark mentioned, I think we're all clear that there should be no waiting lists, right, for young people when it comes to youth employment programs. And I think we're all working hard to further support those kinds of efforts. So probably more on that later. And as Amy mentioned too, also thank you to the National Skills Coalition for their support of the work that we're doing as a national organization that we're also getting a lot of support from them. But thank you, Amy. Appreciate the additional time and support.
No, thank you, Jim. To the point, I want to call out our colleague Yasmin Falakir from the National Skills Coalition is on the call with us. Super excited. And coming up in some future episodes, we will hear from Yasmin and the team there about what's happening at the federal level and have them bring their expertise and what they track. So I know you've gotten email. If you're on this call, you've gotten invited to future sessions. Please do sign up for them. And if you aren't, I know we're throwing around bill names and numbers. We will follow up with information so you can track this. Please, if you're not on our mailing list, drop your email in the chat so we'll add you to our list. Because I think one of the things we do really well, I'm going to pat ourselves on the back for this, is that we can feed up information to you that's really easy to understand about what's happening with all the things at the LOB and how you can super easily jump in, reach out to your legislators, share your stories, share your data, and help move these things forward. Just a point of reflection, really last legislative session, our work was to help legislators and other decision makers understand who are we talking about, right? So when we're talking about youth that are experiencing or at risk of disconnection, we're talking about young people ages 14 to 24 who might be in school and kind of have a tenuous connection. So that makes them at risk. But really, the campaign is really particularly focused in on those young people who are out of school age, right? Those 18 to 24-year-olds, they're not in higher education, they're not in training, but they're not connected to work. And they really need our support and help. And so last year, our push
Oh
was
yeah,
to
I
help
did something about
make
that.
shine a
Yeah,
light
talk
on
about
this
that.
group
Yeah,
of young
that
people.
might be fun though, Dan. You don't think
Oh,
so?
we're getting someone
You might not
else's
have to serve. At
microphone.
least you might have to do.
If you're not muted, thank you. So deeply appreciated. We all do it. Thank you for catching it. So last year, Our coalition and many others, we all worked really hard to help legislators understand who are we talking about? What is the nature of what's happening in Connecticut? And what do we need to do? We did great work last year with really raising awareness and people being like, I understand what's happening. I understand who these young people are. This year, what we're really focused on at the LOB is what are things Connecticut can do right now? And that's what you hear Mark and Jim talking about right now to support young people, particularly focused on accessing services in their community that are focused on meeting the complex needs and hopes and dreams of these young people who've got the long-term or intensive wraparound supports and skills and training and resources that young people need. So that's the message we're getting across this year, that right now legislators can take action to help make a difference for young people, many of whom are on this call. So thank you. And if you're not what you do, spreading the word, sharing information, sharing your stories about these young people and how we can effectively support them in their success. So if you've got questions about what's happening during the legislative session, again, drop them in the chat. I love to see the emails coming in. We will continue communicating with you. And now we're going to pivot and we're going to hear a little bit on the federal update, which is super exciting to have our longtime friend, yay, Marianne, also known as Mimi Haley, the Executive Director of the National Youth Employment Coalition, bringing us the word from what's happening federally and in other parts of the country to help inform the context of our work in Connecticut. Mimi, handing it over to you and Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. It's so good to see so many familiar faces. We run the National Youth Employment Coalition, but my roots, I have very deep roots in Connecticut, live in Fairfield, and just such a pleasure to continue our work together around helping young people across the state in Connecticut. We're going to do this kind of in two parts. I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Nathan Hora, who leads our federal policy work in DC. And I'm going to have him share some of the many different things that have been happening on the federal policy level, and then talk about some of our work outside of that to support that and our work in Connecticut. So, Nathan?
Hi, everyone. Nathan Hora, like you said, with the National Youth Employment Coalition. I lead our federal policy and advocacy work. Maybe do you want me to give an overview of NYC, or would you like to?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. So we're the National Youth Employment Coalition. We are the leading national membership organization for direct service providers, practitioners who support opportunity. And so we have three pillars in our work. Those are capacity building, policy and advocacy, and youth leadership. And so we'll get a little bit in our capacity building work in the later slides, but I sit under the policy and advocacy pillar on our federal side. So
Nathan, I think your audio, we lost you. Are you there?
That's particularly unfortunate timing.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh, there you are.
Oh,
Is
you're
better?
back, Nathan.
Okay, awesome. So to zoom out on kind of what's happening at a macro level and the federal level, there are two large priorities that Congress and the White House are working on. The first one is a reconciliation bill. This is a legislative tool to modify the federal budget, and this is a way to move policy through Congress and funding changes with just a simple majority in the Senate. So to put some kind of examples of bills that have passed as reconciliation bills, think the 2017 tax cuts passed by Congress and signed by the first Trump administration, but also think the Inflation Reduction Act during the Biden years, which invested in semiconductors and other like green technologies, workforce development, et cetera. So this is a common tool that Congress and the White House will use when there is a trifecta. So one party controlling both chambers of Congress and the White House. So because Republicans have the ability to do this now, that is their main focus. Right now, it seems that this reconciliation package is going to include provisions on tax cuts and immigration. Those are the large policies. But in order to enact these, they're going to have to take funding away from other federal initiatives. From our sense of things, right now, it looks like those cuts are going to be at Medicaid, which we know is really important to a lot of our members and young people and people that support them. But when we look at the Education and Workforce Committee, who was instructed to cut $330 million over the next 10 years, we're seeing that a lot of those cuts are going to be targeted, at least right now, at higher education programs rather than workforce provisions. Not saying these are good, but just to kind of inform that right now it seems like workforce issues will be protected. But I would underscore the points made earlier about continuing that education with members of Congress, local legislators, et cetera, to make sure it remains this way. The second large priority is going to be appropriations. This is annual federal funding. And so we have seen in the news about 2 weeks ago, we're on the verge of a government shutdown if Congress didn't pass an appropriations bill. So now that the fiscal year 25 process is wrapped up, Congress is going to be focusing on fiscal year 26. So when it comes to specific priorities for Opportunity Youth and the programs that serve them, there are three that we're really tracking and trying to lead on. The first is reauthorizing the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I know many folks on this call are familiar with this law, but for those who aren't, this is the nation's public workforce system and is one of the few laws, if only laws, that specifically is targeted towards the out-of-school youth population. Congress almost reauthorized this law last year. It fell apart because of a tweet. Like in December. And so we're now seeing that Congress is eager to start this process of getting it across the finish line. The first step in this was actually a hearing where our board chair, Robert Science, testified before a congressional committee, basically kickstarting the process, sharing that there's broad bipartisan support for this law and reauthorizing it, and emphasizing the specific provisions that would benefit Opportunity Youth should it pass. The second key priority we're tracking is appropriations. This is what I listed earlier. But think of any federal program that your program or your partners may receive funding from is going to be from appropriations. So it's increasingly important that we make sure that these programs that are serving OY are getting funding increases and not funding cuts. And so that's another key piece that we're really pushing on. The last priority I wanted to touch on is one I think we've raised with a few partners in Connecticut is the Bipartisan Opportunity Youth Caucus. This is exactly what it sounds like. It is a formal group of members of Congress on a bipartisan basis in the House that are, eager to form a group focused on Opportunity Youth. And right now, we have 6 members, 2 Republicans and 4 Democrats, and Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro is one of those members. She's also, as many folks may know, is the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee. So she is an increasingly important voice in this process in both the caucus and appropriations. And so if folks are interested, I can share some information to thank her office for being part of the caucus, because most members of Congress often hear from the constituents when they're upset about something. So it's always great to say thank you when they've done something good for our field. So I'll share more information about that in the chat in just a bit. And I'll turn it over to Mimi to talk more about our Connecticut work.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, and just kudos to Nathan. He has been on the Hill so much this year, and it's different than it was last year, that's for sure. So happy to connect with anyone also about any of those initiatives that we're running down in DC. So I wanted to also just share some of the work that we're doing in Connecticut. We're also, some of you might remember, I used to be with Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness, had created the Youth Engagement Team initiatives, if that's familiar, and did a lot of work on collective impact and ending youth homelessness in Connecticut. So kind of bringing some of that, the successes that we had during that time period, and bringing in all the ideas that we get from across the country around serving the opportunity youth population, and then having some really deep conversations with state agencies, in Connecticut, direct service providers, young people. I see some of the young people that we've been talking to on the call today, which is awesome, and our workforce boards, and just really wanting to honor the deep expertise of young people with lived experience, but also those people that are closest to working with them, and the tremendous knowledge base that's there with our direct service providers like Mark, who was presenting today from Catalyst CT. So just wanted to share that. We are working around trying to figure out new ways to build collaboration and support all the efforts that are out there. We've been doing this for about 3 years now, creating a concept for holding those pieces. And we are getting ready to issue a report later this year around what that might look like. But really, aligning the different interests that are out there and keeping central to that, what are the needs of these young people, and who, is using data to also understand what are the successes that we already have in Connecticut, and how can we continue to build on that. So that's a kind of a project on statewide system of support that we are happy to talk more about. I know a lot of you on the call today we've had connections with, and that work continues, just exploring what this could look like. So next slide. Just, a note on that work too, Connecticut is, I believe, talking to, we have members all around the country. We represent these millions of young people that are out of work and out of school. And I have to say, I use Connecticut as an example all the time, great work that's being done by United Way, Connecticut United Way, and folks like Jim Boucher, and really a lot of you that are on this call. I see Christina Baldwin is on here as well. But as an example of what's possible, knowing that we're not there yet as a state, but we are doing some really wonderful work that I'm hoping to continue to kind of hold that work up to others in the country, to really demonstrate this is what a state can do. So we're getting there. One of the other things that we're doing is Youth Champion Communities, a Mayor's Challenge. We started this a couple of years ago and really have had great success working with cities like Atlanta, San Antonio, Tampa, and Everett, Washington, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Albany, New York. So all kinds of cities to first develop a framework and a set of domains that can be used to really look at a community's efforts to driving down the number of young people that are experiencing disconnection, and how we can track that. What are the areas that they are wanting to focus on, that what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses, and how can we help them understand on a community level what the denominator is for those young people, not just how many are served in the program, but some of the work that we've been moving towards in Connecticut is what is the universe of these young people, and are we making a difference in driving that number down. So we are looking at we have 7 domains that we've developed. We have a community assessment that we're using. We've got asset mapping that we do with the communities, which is always, something that can be a really powerful tool. And we're strategically planning with a group of communities and mayors now across the country. So I wanted to share that with you as well. And then next slide, Nathan. Great. Just, some other things. We have all kinds of members, across Connecticut. So just really proud as a Connecticut resident. I live in Fairfield, to be able to see so many faces at our events. We've got our annual forum that I know a bunch of people are coming to from May 12th to the 14th in Minneapolis. And this is something we do every year. Last year it was in Atlanta. We had the Secretary of Labor there, all kinds of folks. It was amazing. And then before that was in Indianapolis, but it's a great gathering and it's all about opportunity youth. So there are best practices. We have a data spotlight, workshops. We've got all different populations that we're focusing on, lots of young people that are there. And we have special kind of segments that focus on the collaboration between, homeless service providers and workforce partners, so continuing to do that work there with juvenile justice and justice involved youth and workforce, foster care youth and workforce. So we've got like really an array of all kinds of folks coming from across the country to really share best practices and be able to be in community with one another. So if you're interested, we can, I think Nathan could probably put the link in the chat there. We do sell out, so just if you want to go, you should sign up soon. And then do we have any other slides, Nathan, or was that? Oh, so I just wanted to mention one more event that will be coming up. We haven't officially announced it yet, but we did have a lot of folks from Connecticut there as well. In the fall, we do a Capitol Hill Day event. So it's a real opportunity for you to join, but it's called Youth Days. And it is, a remarkable event with all kinds of young people that some have never been on a plane before, and but they are able to go into the Capitol, meet with their legislators. And we had a group last year that was able to meet with the heads of the federal agencies, and so it's a wonderful event as well. And so that's.
Thank you, Nathan. We've got some questions, Mimi. Nathan, thanks for putting the link for the annual forum. And if you could also, if you get a moment, drop the Hill Days, because what an amazing opportunity, right? And to be able to have that experience with the support of NYEC with people, right? To make that happen, it's something special and it's really important. It's great. Mimi, Nathan, we have a question from Deb in the chat. Is the mayor's challenge scalable for much smaller communities?
Yeah, great question. We had, when we put out the call for communities, we had communities from all across the country apply to be a part of this. We have a cohort of 7 cities right now. And, the smaller cities are like Scranton, Pennsylvania is probably the smallest that we're doing. But what we got a lot of applications also from rural areas and tribal regions. So we wanted to kind of have apples to apples in this first pilot, but we are planning to do, to refine what we're doing to adapt it to smaller communities. And it's already, very adaptable because, we really listen to what the communities think they need, what the young people there, think they need. So yes is the short answer. And we will be, reaching out more. We're also going to do something around rural communities, which the challenges are a little different there, and tribal regions. So
great.
Yes, happy to talk about it.
So if people are interested in learning more about that, should they connect with you, or how do people stay informed? Great.
Yeah.
And Mimi, when you get a moment, why don't you drop your email in the chat also? So
I can do that. I might refer you to one of my great staff people that are kind of the leads on across the country on this. But I would love to hear from you. I'm happy to talk more.
I have a quick question, which is probably a long question, and I know we have a couple minutes, but as we're looking at the reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, what are your guys, just quickly, what are your hopes for Opportunity Youth in that? What might you love to see? How could that look different? What are you hoping to look different in that? Um, or not, because given the environment we're in, maybe it's not about different, maybe it's about holding on. But how are you hoping that NYEC can influence that, and what could it look like?
Yeah, happy to take this one. So in some ways, this agreement that happened last Congress did kind of both what you said, both made some progress, but also preserved some important provisions. I'd say one of the really large changes is there are a few that we really supported. One is updating the definition of out of school youth to opportunity youth, and to also include youth experiencing homelessness and we've and transitioning out of the foster care system, regardless of school status, as opportunity youth. So that's going to allow providers to serve more OY or folks who are maybe at risk of disconnection but still part of the school system. Another key change was something that NYC has advocated for a long time, which is the use of self-attestation. So essentially, what this is some programs we've heard would turn away young people if they didn't have documentation or documents to say, I am transitioning out of the foster care system, or I'm homeless, or what have you. And so not many people carry a lot of formal documents on them. And with, OY being a relatively transient population, like sometimes this is the last time that a program saw. And so what this policy change would do is allow for the burden of proving eligibility to be transferred from the young person to the program. So if this were passed, the program would have about 40 days to be able to determine that they can serve this young person. There are also on kind of the preserving piece. I would say there have been threats to the WIOA youth program's funding. And so we also share the belief that reauthorizing the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, especially on a bipartisan basis, is going to incentivize Congress to invest in these programs. And we've seen from proposals from the House for the past 2 years, calls to eliminate the program fully. So that was another large reason for our support, is that we think updating and refining this law, and then also providing more dollars to it, will help both preserve and improve the system.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And I'm sure I'm not the only person right now who's trying to figure out how to effectively get my voice heard at the federal level on issues. And I'm really appreciative to have NYEC as both the guide and the vehicle to help really make that happen. So thank you guys so much. And thank you for continuing to add into the chat great resources that you have. If you're not watching the chat, please check it out, because there's a lot in there. All right. So now we're going to thank Rachel. Thank you for joining me as a big head on the screen. And now we're going to transition, and we're going to hear from Rachel Leventhal-Weiner, who is the Director of Evaluation and Impact Federal Funding. I have to read this. With the Data and Policy Analytics, the DAPA unit at the state of Connecticut. Wow. And so you've been involved with the state's P20 WIN data sharing effort. And so just to reflect back a little bit, one of the legislative successes of last session was having this big data collection that we saw in the Dalio Education and Boston Consulting Group report, the Unspoken Crisis, come out, which allowed us, I think for the first time, to look and to really in one degree, count and actually have a much more accurate number of the number of youth in Connecticut who are experiencing or at risk of disconnection, and to help us understand how those young people moved across systems. What do we know about these young people so they're not just numbers? Where are they in our communities? We learned so much. And what was passed last year in legislation was asking the state to continue to do that on an annual basis. And so Rachel's an integral part of that. I'm so glad you're here to tell us about where we are and what's going on and what we're learning.
Thanks so much for the invitation again, and thanks to Daniel and Amy too for hosting us. So I prepared some slides to present, and then I also told Daniel that I would live demonstrate a data dashboard that's available, but I just want to give you a little context for this work. Amy did that so expertly, and I have a little more to add. So I'm just sharing my screen. Here we go. Hopefully you are seeing my screen, and now you will be seeing it in presentation mode. There we go. Okay.
We are seeing it, Rachel. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Like Amy said, my name is Rachel Leventhal-Weiner. I lead part of the data and policy analytics team, and I'll tell you a little bit about that work in just a second. We are the team that is responsible, based on Public Act 24-45, for producing the Disconnected and At-Risk Youth Report. And I want to tell you a little bit about that report. I know folks are familiar with it, but because it originated outside of the state, as the state entity that's now working on this work, there's some things that are similar and some future plans that might be a little bit different. So just to tell you a little bit about our team, we are a group within the Office of Policy and Management. We report to the Chief Data Officer. His name is Scott Gall. And this work really originated with the bubble you see in the middle of the screen with our open data portal, data.ct.gov. And that's a place where for the last 10 years, we've been encouraging our state agency partners and partners in state service to be democratizing access to information by adding to the open data assets that exist. So if you go to the open data portal, you'll be able to find a lot of information that agencies make available to stakeholders, advocates, regular residents. And that's an effort that we're actively working on with all of the, including the data that you'll see from the Disconnected and At-Risk Youth Report. We're in charge of writing the state data plan. That means that we're actively also working with our colleagues across state government to ensure that we're using the information we collect strategically and efficiently. We host all of the geospatial data for the state. So that's a big addition to our team in the last few years. So parcel information, aerial imagery, all kinds of really fascinating assets exist. And that's, if you're interested, you can always reach out to our team with questions. But the piece I'm here to talk about today is really our research and evaluation work and P20WIN. And so P20WIN is an acronym. It's not easy to understand. It stands for the Preschool through Age 20 Workforce Information Network. We're about to go through a potential rebrand with a different name that's a little more intelligible. I can try it out here, Data Link CT. And we think that it describes a little bit more about what we do. So P20WIN is sort of a partnership among state agencies who have legally agreed to share data. This system isn't like, it's not a technology system. It's not like an office where you can knock on the door and say, data, please. This is sort of a service that our team provides to both state brother sister agencies as well as external researchers and stakeholders. And the ability to actually match and merge data from multiple agencies, like was required in the Disconnected and At-Risk Youth Report, would not have been possible if we didn't have an entity like P20WIN available. This is not, it's not unique to Connecticut. This statewide longitudinal data system work exists in almost every state. It is also funded federally by the Department of Education. And we are able to do this work because of 2 grants that we've received and work in partnership with our partners at Department of Education and Department of Labor. So it's important to know that the work is currently federally funded. The work that you'll see, the Disconnected and At-Risk Youth work, was an unfunded expectation. So there's a lot of different challenges that we'll have going forward with producing the work. But what's really exciting is that it started out as an arrangement among a small group of agencies, and these are all the agencies that currently participate. So while this was first an education to workforce research entity, now we have a lot of health and human services agencies that are a part of the agreement as well. And so when this report originated, some of these agencies weren't even a part of the partnership. So we're really proud of this work. It's overseen by my colleague, Katie Breslin, who's has deep roots in advocacy and outreach. And she's the one that coordinates a lot of the legal agreements and a lot of just the comings and goings of all of the work it takes to make these projects happen. So just to give you some context, Amy mentioned this. So the original Disconnected and At-Risk Youth Report was released in October of 2023. What you don't know is that that work originated in late 2022. So it takes a while to work with brother sister agencies to actually make this happen. And there was a significant amount of advocacy, as most folks know, once the report was released. And so it was included in statute that that the executive board, which really is, our leadership of our of our P20 Win group, release this report on an annual basis, beginning this past January. We missed our delivery date by just a little while. It came out at the end of February. That's because session ended. I can explain a little bit why in the future. But the Public Act states that on an annual basis, that we provide an update on the count, and that we also break down by key subgroups or demographics. And so this work would not, with our current team, within current resources, would have been a major challenge. So at the time that the Public Act was passed, the Dalio Foundation agreed to also fund the Boston Consulting Group to work with us in partnership, which they did for 6 to 7 months. So this work that you'll see here today, I think on the next slide, I have all the agencies that contributed data. So we looked at a number of different factors that might impact folks who would be considered part of these disconnected or at-risk populations. And so we have 9 agencies that were included. If I counted at every agency the number of folks that actually participated in making this work happen, I think we're up to at least 50 when you include the folks that work on the data, the leadership, the lawyers, anyone in technology. So this is an effort. While I'm presenting you as something simple, I'm here humbly to represent between 50 and 100 of my colleagues and contractors to be able to get this work over the finish line. And I also wanted to just reflect on, because this work was in statute, you'll see here it says using the data model from request 43. That's the original data request, which means that originated outside of state government. So you're going to see language or maybe hear definitions that don't 100% align with the way that maybe State Department of Education measures something, or perhaps we want a more asset-oriented framework. And so those are things we're still working on. But in this first year of our team doing this work ourselves, we really wanted to be sure that we honored the frame that was originated, and now we're going to sort of do more with the work going forward. So it's really important framing to know that as things come inside the house, it's a little, we hold on to the legacy of things that came before us. We also approach this work very humbly. The work is not meant to provide some sort of deterministic view of people's life course, value judgments, or to assess the effectiveness of any specific programs. The goal is really to point people towards where we see associations, and our team's going to dig a little bit deeper over the course of the rest of the year with some deeper analyses. I want to make sure I have time for our demo. So just so you have a sense of the big questions, they're in the boxes at the top, and there's lots of little sub questions, and our folks at United Way of Connecticut can share out. These are all also in the report. But our goal was to refine our understanding of folks who would be considered disconnected or at risk of being disconnected, and to look at some of the channels, pathways, factors that are associated with those journeys. And so folks have seen the definitions really matter here. So, and these definitions do come from sort of the original conception of the report. So if you were considered at risk, you would be considered off track, meaning you hadn't met credit attainment expectations, or you might have exhibited chronic absenteeism or some behavioral issues while in school. And anything in both of these categories would be considered severely off track. And then in the disconnected side, we were looking at folks who were 1 year after high school, who were, either had their diploma but weren't employed or in post-secondary education, or who had not earned their graduation credential and were also not employed. And so those are often grouped together, and you'll see in some of these visualizations that they're broken out in categories. I'm going to show the data dashboard because I think I want to make sure we have enough time to just talk through that. So we've put together the report. Let's talk right here. The report has a really nice data story. I'm going to put this in the chat. Let's see if I can do this as we talk. And the data story has an embed link for the report for all the assets that we have associated with it, and then a link to this dashboard. I am not adeptly putting it in the chat, but we will get there.
I got it.
So,
I got it for you, Rachel.
Fantastic. You're the best. I told the folks that Zoom was not my preferred presentation platform. So at the top, you have a link to the Public Act, so you can see exactly what we're expected to do. And this is the report that's linked right here. But the thing that people are most interested in is the information that sits behind the report. So you heard the definitions. There's the disconnected population and the at risk of disconnected population. And those go together to make that super big number that you hear about that has come down by a share since the publication of the first report. We think that's actually due to a stronger labor market and to efforts at the State Department of Education to reduce chronic absenteeism. So what you see here on this first panel is just the share among the population and the changes over time. And you're going to see a lot of visualizations if you were to click on all of these dark blue or light blue bars. And on the left side, you're always going to, if you're clicking on things here, you're going to be looking at the disconnected population. And on the right side, those who are considered at risk of disconnection. When you click into something, so we're going to just demo for a second, you're going to be taken to a new set of visualizations. And if you hover over things, you're going to get lots of information and feedback. And in this case, this shows you the school year changes from the 17-18 school year through the 2023 school year, and the amount of students that would be considered at risk. And this comes from the State Department of Education data. And you can see that the off track for credits, is maybe similar, but this chronic absenteeism bucket, due to other factors, that's come down a good amount over the last 2 years. And we really think that's where some of the share of the decline in the big number is coming from. We can see that borne out just if we looked at these things more closely. This is the same credit attainment, attendance, and behavior. There's a big downturn in behavior, obviously, in that pandemic year. And each one of these panes that we have to share, if you just click on this button, return to overview, you're going to go back to this situation. If you click back, it will take you out of the data story. It's just a feature of the design. This is embedded inside of this web page. I think the thing that people are going to be interested to explore are some of the factors associated. And this is where the power of the P20 data really comes in. So if we looked at the factors associated with being at risk of disconnection, this is looking at the data that were supplied by all of our different agencies. And we can see that of the kids who would be considered, of all of the students who had ever experienced one of these factors in high school, so of all the students who had ever been criminally justice involved, 73% would be considered at risk of disconnection. And some of the factors that bear out here are experiences with alternative education, issues with behavioral health, or transiency, moving 2 times or more while in high school. And this red bar here, this is, folks from the general population, sort of the average of the folks who might have experienced these issues. And so what our concern is that these help us kind of identify, okay, so this is a tool for transparency. We want to work with our agency partners to say, okay, so what's happening? I mean, we know a lot of the issues that are happening. We have a lot of humility around the work that's going on, but now we can focus in on, okay, for folks who are undercredited or off track for behavioral issues, how are we going to actually support those folks finding points of reconnection? The other item that I know folks are going to be interested in, there are 2 sets of interactive maps. So if I clicked on the interactive map, that's going to show you the percentage of kids at risk or disconnected by town. You can find your town's percentages by hovering over them. And then at the very bottom, there is access to a spreadsheet that has all of the data that's contained in this dashboard. And you download that by just clicking on this hyperlink right here.
Rachel, it's Amy. If I can just jump in real quick. This is obviously so powerful. And one of the things I think I want to point out is that the initial report that came out was great, but not all kind of the data sets that ideally would have been included were included. It seems like this brings in more state agency data or partner data that had in the past and some really critical pieces. Could you maybe highlight what's included this time that wasn't with a privately done report?
There's 3 really big innovations here. The first is that Department of Correction and Court Support Services Division were not partners at the time of the first report. So while their data were highlighted in a chapter of the report, they weren't included to look at the way people experience different factors together. In addition, Department of Social Services did not share data for this initial request, and they did in this instance. So if a child had been part of a family that received services from the Department of Social Services. That's reflected here. So the thing I think that would be really of interest to folks is this idea of number of factors experiences, and this kind of reflects the ACEs idea for early childhood experiences. And this is where I think the richness comes in, and where some future and further analysis is really needed. So for folks among those who be considered at risk, a greater share of those who experience more factors fall into this at-risk category. So of all of the people who experience at least 4 of these or show up in agency services in 4 places, 73% of those would be considered at risk of disconnection. And so it's important to think about, it's the same idea. If you experience 0 factors, you're just yourself, you go to school, you graduate, only 11% of those would be considered at risk of disconnection. And so I think that on the disconnected side, that a lot of these same trends bear out. And one thing I wanted to just highlight is that the definition here is ages 14 to 26. One of the legislative bills includes language around separating the age categories, which is something that we do think might be necessary to dig into some of these trends. And like I said, because this work originated outside of state government, sometimes things don't align. So your advocacy community is focused on 14 to 24. This is 14 to 26. Some social science research is 16 to 19. So there's a lot of different places where there's overlap, which is why as the state entity producing the report, we want to make sure that folks understand, and if they have any questions about the definitions, they should feel free to reach out to us. I think I include at the very end here my contact information. I'm happy to field questions, and I'm eager for folks to use the tools that we've prepared and to provide us with feedback. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it today, and I'm happy to take questions.
Rachel, I feel like many of us could fall into a very deep dive into these dashboards. So thank you so much for giving us a taste of what's in here in a really meaningful way. Incredibly helpful. For folks on the call, just to say that, at one point, Rachel pulled up that map, right, where you hovered over numbers and percentages at every town. That map from the original report, I think, was one of the most things that cut through. And that, the headline message was every town in Connecticut that had enough that could be counted, right, had at least 10% of young people that fell into the category of at risk experiencing disconnection or at risk of disconnection. I think that was mind blowing for people. And it really reset maybe some preconceived notions about who these young people are and where they are. And the headline message was, no. These are kids in your communities. These are your neighbors, your kids, your schools, right?
I can't resist also just at least plugging some future work on this topic that really aligns with a lot of what Mimi and Nathan were talking about in terms of the national WIOA funding for workforce development that's happening in our state. So P20WIN allows us to study all kinds of things that have really important policy implications. And so we're currently working on an analysis of workforce pathways. So not just for youth, but for anyone who's participating in the workforce system. It's an initial and pretty big analysis, and we know it's going to yield a lot of other exciting future projects. That work will be ready. I don't know if it's going to be ready within this legislative session, but we'll be ready in the next few weeks and months. And it's something to look forward to seeing, because we don't really have that we're aware of benchmarks and then measures of where, who's achieving what outcomes after they participate in workforce development programs. And these are happening just for our regular Department of Labor programs, and also some specialized analyses of ARPA funded programs as well.
Yeah, Rachel, there's not enough Zoom outcome icons for me to express my joy in that statement, right? This has been like the holy grail that we've been working in workforce, right? To really understand those outcomes. So exciting. I have a feeling we're going to want you back to talk more about that, no doubt. So if you're thinking about how do I use this? So if you're connecting with decision makers or legislators who you think this is a new issue to them, man, pull up those maps and just start a conversation about this is what's happening in our community. This is what it looks like with our young people. Such a powerful way to start that conversation. And if you're going deeper, whether it's planning your work or really trying to get into things, how do we do prevention? How do we do effective information? Diving deep into this data, and clearly the data to come is absolutely amazing. I have to wrap us. Mimi, do you have something real quick? I know, I don't want to miss your hand.
Yeah, Rachel, I'm going to connect with you offline. I know we've met, just super exciting what you're doing. Just a quick question around the time frame of this. It's an annual thing, right? So it's like a snapshot in time. How far away are we from doing quarterly or monthly?
I think I can't speak to that definitively. I don't know if the way the data are collected, it would even be possible. So I
Okay.
think it's going to remain an annual. There's language right now even to make it biannual. And while that might sound like far apart, I will tell you that the effort to produce this report is not insignificant in terms of time and hours. And so I just don't know if it would even be humanly possible to produce it on any faster cadence.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Just curious because so this is such an issue across the country.
Of
So what you
course.
are doing is it's remarkable. And I know I've met with Scott and we've had some national conversations with other communities, but yeah, looking forward to connecting and
Sounds good.
Connecticut,
yeah.
right? We have so much to
Thank
do, but we are building from such a strong place. And it's so exciting, like this level of partnership. All right, before we break, data, amazing. But remember, it's your stories that move people to action, right? So share your stories. And we've got some great niche stories to share. I dropped the link. We've got these videos featuring young people from many of your programs and communities. They are fabulous. View them, share them, send them to your legislators, send them to your local leaders, send them to people who should know. Um, they are great, and we hope to continue to do more work like this together because it is powerful. We are getting together next month on the 18th, same time at noon, I think, right? And we're going to be talking about workforce and diving deeper into some more workforce issues. Then we're going to get together the following month and talk about the child tax credit. We've got childcare coming up. So stay on our list, jump in, and if you've got ideas or things you want to talk about, please let us know. Reach out to Daniel or myself. We're delighted for your partnership and to figure out how we all stay connected and pull together for a more equitable and just Connecticut, what we're working towards. Thank you, everyone.